All right, welcome to Comfortably Uncomfortable. You've got Sandy and Alex here, and we are here to empower women to choose courage over comfort by getting comfortably uncomfortable. We get real and cut through the bullshit. Are you ready to get a little weird? Because we're going to laugh, sweat, cry, and grow together.
No topic is going to be TMI. Well, maybe for me, but not for Sandy. We complement each other in that way. Okay, so are we ready?
Well, yeah, duh, I am, but are you?
Okay, let's go. The one with the vagina farts.
She said it. She said vagina farts. Yes.
The
I'm so
downward
happy right
dog dilemma. How about that?
Oh, that's good. I like that one.
Or the one-legged dog dilemma.
So good. You
All
guys,
right.
I'm so happy right now. Like, Alex is going to talk about vagina farts. We have pushed this episode for a few months because she was like, I don't know.
Not a few, 6 months. 6 months we pushed this. This was on our this was on our original list. I had to get really comfortably uncomfortable with the audience before I was ready to go to this one.
Oh, it's so good. Well,
But I have to say, we had a good laugh about it the other day because finally when we started chatting about the topic, we both said, damn those one-legged dogs.
we did. We totally
did. I have to say, I am going to credit Dr. Sarah Duvall. So she's the one we both did
Physical therapist.
Yeah, amazing physical therapist. She has the postpartum corrective exercise course that we both took. And so everything we know about vagina farts, we learned from her. So thank you. But it's, I mean, the reality is that there's not a lot of information out there about it. But it's pelvic instability in some way. It's related to your pelvic floor. There can be a few different reasons why it happens.
And if y'all are wondering what it is, and you've only heard it as a queef, that is also a word. I hate that word, but yes, I'd rather just say vagina fart, or we could just call it a vart, the one with the vart. Oh, yeah. We could say that. But yeah.
But Sandy, run us through what it is.
Well, I mean, this is where, like you said, Alex, there's lots of different things that could provoke it, that could happen, but it's essentially air that's coming out of the vagina versus the anus. Yes. The difference is like, and this is where I'm going to say this right now, like if you had it and you're laughing and yours smell bad, or if there's a unique discharge, that's where I'm going to say you need to seek medical attention. You need help because there's something that is more wrong than kind of the like, oh, I pushed babies out, I have hormonal change. Those are the two signs that we're going to say, hey, you need to go for sure, seek medical attention.
And it does sound like those are definitely more rare, but very important to note. So generally, it's not considered a bad thing or, harmful. It's very, very normal. Although not comfortable at all in a yoga class.
No. And a lot of times, and you're probably going to talk about this, Alex, a lot of times it has to do with, that soda can analogy that we talked about back in like our peeing our pants episode and the abdominal pressure. Because if we recall, the top of the soda can is actually your vocal cords. So your vocal cords and your pelvic floor are the bookends to that soda can, and everything in between is that intra-abdominal pressure regulation. And so this is where I tease because Dr. Sarah Duvall talks about when you go into downward dog, it might be beneficial to do the opposite kind of breathing that you might be being cued in class. And the reason for that is because of the vocal cord opening compared to the pelvic floor opening and having them both closed.
So when you're doing an exhale, if you're taking a big inhale into your belly and rib cage, and as you exhale, you do that first pelvic floor lift or a kegel. If you exhale into your downward dog, it's going to help you avoid this air
The
escapes.
vagina fart. The flatulence. Yes.
So right off the
so
bat, we're going to give you the tip
that's the
of
tip.
how to stop it from happening. And that is a big exhale, but very focused on your pelvic floor lift, engaging that entire belly. Exhale up into your downward dog. But I
So
mean, it
good.
can, yeah. Let it soak in. Think about that. But I mean, it can also be caused if you have prolapse, whether
Absolutely.
major or minor prolapse, it can happen. Again, pressure the uterus down on the pelvic floor. It can also happen if you have a tight pelvic floor, and so you go into that downward dog and you get a really good stretch, and air gets caught. And am I missing anything? Those are kind of the two,
Yeah, I mean, essentially the most common things that you'll experience, which I'm sure you all are sitting there going, oh yeah, I know that. We talked about the exercise and stretching, because what that does is the coordination between your vocal cords, your pelvic floor, when you do an exercise, when you stretch, having that intra-abdominal pressure, and then basically the air gets trapped and then the air gets released. And so the stretch either released it, or the, lack of coordination of your breathing in and your breathing out. Like that's what happens with that one. The other one you talked to, Alex, was like the pelvic floor anatomy. Like everyone has slightly different anatomy that it could vary, and you've never had a kid before, you're not going through menopause, and it's just, that's how the air gets trapped in. We did talk about like pregnancy and menopause, like there's hormonal changes and then there's like shifting change, like laxity in those muscles that can create that air trapping or the coordination with your breath. But then the one that honestly, I think a lot of people have come to me and talk about this, and maybe that's why I'm becoming a pelvic floor physical therapist, is intercourse, right? When people are in this private, intimate setting with their partner, and then like that happens, and it's like, oh no, like what just happened? And so again, you have to think about, like, if you're having penetrating intercourse, like something is penetrating inside and might be pushing that trapped air. And that's why you have it, right? So the tip for that is changing the angle of the pelvic floor, right? Or changing the angle of the pelvis. Like I tease and I'm like, yeah, sex pillows, fantastic option. Being on top versus bottom, being in a different position. I feel like Alex is getting a little uncomfortable talking about this. This is so good. But, at the end of the day, it's air trapping. It's something that is natural in the sense of
very, very normal.
Yeah, and common. It's something that socially we, and then, I mean, I have actually met women who can do it on command.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and I like laugh and tease, and it's like, and I mean, we're going back to our first episode of where I was like apparently describing a kegel with a straw and you're pulling up a milkshake, right?
Milkshake, yes.
Yeah. Well, those are people who have a lot of voluntary control over those muscles and can push air out and suck air in and push air out and suck air in. It's just like burping, essentially. Like you can, and then try and like burp on command. It's the down there burping, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, very like, this is where if intercourse is painful along with the Vart, then we have some other stuff going on, right? So if we have pain happening with this, that's where I really do recommend you seek help, go see a professional, see somebody, because something else is going on. If it just happens to where you guys are transitioning position and all of a sudden, there it is, then you know what? Freaking laugh about it. I hope you and your partner are in a place where you can be like, yep, there's anatomy. Like that's what's happening. And then if you're in class and it always happens to you when you do a down dog, well, Alex just told you, she's going to tell you again, like the way you breathe has a huge, huge benefit and help to try and prevent this.
Yeah. Yeah. Take that big inhale, filling your belly and ribs. Use that exhale, starting with the pelvic floor. Lift, you're contracting that muscle. So trying not to let the air escape, exhale into that downward dog, and hopefully it'll help you out next time.
Exactly. everything that goes down in there, talking about pain, talking about peeing, talking about pooping. Like if you haven't noticed the theme, it's knowing your pelvic floor and knowing if there's pain, if you're straining, if it's something that only happens when you do a downward dog or only when you have sex, or like start checking those things off and become very aware of what your symptoms are. That way you can talk to someone and get more help and get more information. But at the end of the day, like we have to be able to laugh about it. We have to be able to understand that, like, if you've never had it in your life and you're having it postpartum, yeah, you pushed a baby out of your vagina. And even if you are C-section, my C-section mamas, like you had a baby pushing on that pelvic floor, stretching, lengthening those muscles. It doesn't matter how they got delivered. You still did some stretching down there. So however that baby came out, if this is happening after, postnatal, think about, oh, well, maybe if I do strengthen or relax, because maybe you have pelvic floor tightening and those cord, like I call it the vagina vocal cords, if they're vibrating or if they're creating any sort of tension that can't be controlled, that's going to increase your probability of doing it.
Right. Well, and I mean, one of the reasons why I think I'm uncomfortable admitting it is because I feel like, oh, I'm a professional at this, so I shouldn't still be having problems like that, right? Because there's something about pelvic floor, toning that muscle correctly, tightening or loosening properly. So probably, trying to understand for myself why it might be happening, but it's also just a reality of postpartum life. So I know I giggle about it, but I mean, I think I just have more of an issue talking to the whole world about this instead of just
and I think,
but it's important to know, to your point, like what, be aware, because it could totally be nothing, or, it could be a symptom of something else, even if it's as simple as still needing to work on your pelvic floor strength.
I mean, it could be, or relaxation.
Yep. Yeah.
And what's funny is like people will ask me like, well, it only happens, this, and then I start probing, and then it's like, oh, got it. When you've drank a lot, when there's alcohol involved, and I have to remind them that it's a systemic relaxant, right? Like it's a depressant, meaning like it's relaxing your muscles. Alcohol at high levels is going to relax that. Well, it doesn't just relax some muscles and not all of them. It's systemic. So like if these things happen because you've drank too much or smoked too much or whatever, like you have to take that into consideration and understand that, like, oh, like it's not that like every time you
all
walk,
the factors.
Exactly. Because like that, and honestly, like this is an area of research that is still being investigated, because we don't, like you said at the beginning of this, so like we don't know, other than the air trapping, other than the stretching, like these are all the things that we can hypothesize as to what's happening biomechanically or systemically with that, depressant. But maybe there is a neurological function, and maybe you're that one person that has that neurological dysfunction into one of the pelvic floor muscles, and you have to figure that out, and that maybe for you have a solution, right? So at the end of the day, you're going to hear me say this over and over and over again. It's like, if it's a problem for you, you don't have to suffer in silence. There is going to be something that could probably help you. All right. But at the end of the day, if you've done all the things and it happens to you less often and it just randomly happens, like give yourself some grace and understand that like we are, normal humans that have things that come in and out of our bodies.
Right. You nailed it.
So one more time, if you vagina fart, own it, because it's totally fine. And if somebody's going to try and make you feel embarrassed for it, well, you can give them my number and I'll give them a nice little spanking or something. I don't know.
Good plan.
Thank you for showing up today. Getting awkward is always more fun with friends. Give us a review, tag us, and share us so we can continue to grow together.
Use hashtag CUPod, letter C, letter U, or tag us. You can find Sandy on Instagram at sweatandShineOn, and Alex at aj.afterbabyfit on Instagram and afterbabyfit on Facebook and YouTube. We'll see you next time.